Anyone that has played Halo Combat Evolved knows that it starts with you going to meet Captain Keyes. And most people probably know that after you get a weapon, you can go back and kill Captain Keyes.
What the hell are you doing?
Of course, this results in you being trapped with several invincible, angry Marines. The game gives you this option, but doesn't let it go anywhere. What if it did? What if Master Chief actually killed Captain Keyes? What's up, bosses? I'm Jone543, and I'll be exploring this question today. I'm trying out some what if ideas, so please leave a like if you enjoy it, and comment below what you'd like to see next. Thank you. So why would Chief kill Captain Keyes? Let's say it was a muscle spasm, something out of his control, but he still bears the blame. From Chief shooting Keyes, I can think of three big ramifications. 1. Cortana will not like Master Chief. At the point where you receive weapons, you have already installed Cortana into the suit. She has access to Chief's brain through the neural interface. She can use this to speed up the connection from his mind to his suit, as well as speak to him. We also know she can use the suit's communications and affect the shields. Based on several times that Chief has been unconscious, it doesn't appear she has any control over his motor functions. What she chooses to do in this situation will come up again later. 2. The crew will not like Master Chief. This is less critical given how strong and skilled Chief is, although transportation may become an issue. 3. There are a few important things that Keyes does along the way, like landing the Autumn, hearing about the control room, and finding the Flood. How differently these events happen will also be explored later. Alright, so Chief just killed Keyes. What happens right away? Well, we have the game to fill that portion in for us. Cortana sends out a message to take down Master Chief.
Security to the bridge. The Master Chief has gone rampant. Take him down, boys.
Some Marines come in and Chief fights. Unlike the game, the Marines are not invincible, and Chief takes them down with ease. He took down 4 ODSTs after surgery once. 2 of them died. This really would be no problem. As we can see in the game, he can still move, fight, and regenerate shields just fine. Sadly, Sergeant Johnson is on that team, and he also falls. So now Chief needs to escape the Pillar of Autumn. It wouldn't really be all that different than the normal game, just some human enemies along with the Covenant. Not that Chief is trying to kill humans, but if they're in the way, he'll do what he has to. Chief leaves the Autumn in an escape pod, but this time, instead of landing near everyone else, he tries to go as far as he can. His only objective at the moment is to survive, and being far away from everybody else seems like a good start. As he descends, he narrows in on where he might land. He's over some sort of ocean with islands dotted throughout it. Obviously, the water is where he doesn't want to end up. He picks an island and steers the escape pod toward it. Coming down, getting close, nailed it. The impact knocks Chief out like usual. Once he regains consciousness, he grabs a weapon and gets on the move. It doesn't take long until he comes across some sort of structure. This doesn't look Covenant. It's certainly not human. Who built it? Well, Chief, being not an archaeologist, doesn't really care. What does matter to him is cover. Better in a structure than on the beach. At this point, you'll probably recognize that he's on the island we see in the Silent Cartographer. He's here so early, the Covenant have barely landed troops on the ring, and none on the island yet. Chief is alone.
I've spent the last 12 hours cooped up in here watching you toady about.
Right, so Cortana is still here. As much as she regrets what Chief did, she still needs him alive. If he goes, she's helpless. As Chief explores the structure, Cortana monitors communications. Similar to the level Halo, Cortana gets updates about the Pillar of Autumn going down and the crew getting captured. The Autumn followed Cortana's subroutines and landed exactly where she planned. Knowing this for later might be helpful. Eventually, Chief gets down to the Silent Cartographer, the map to the control room. He's here way earlier than in the original timeline. This means he and Cortana know way less about the ring. Instead of simply looking for a map, Cortana wants Chief to put her in the system.
That terminal, try that.
She'll get information way faster this way. Chief takes out her chip, puts it in the system, and she starts looking. Precisely at that moment, Chief hears sounds behind him. He quickly dodges over to a pillar to hide as a squad of grunts and elites get closer. They know somebody landed a pod on the island, but they don't know who. Chief gets the drop on the squad and quickly resolves the threat. However, this is not the only Covenant on the island. Getting into the structure was easy. Getting out won't be the same. Chief can hear more Covenant coming. He says Cortana's name, but she doesn't respond. He says it again, nothing. Chief is skilled, but we have to remember there's a reason the Covenant were winning this war. Soon Chief would be overrun. The longer he stayed, the more dangerous it would be. Chief grabbed the chip from the terminal and silently made his way out. Chief says Cortana a couple more times. She's not there, Besides that, the silence doesn't last. The bodies are found and the Covenant go on high alert. Well, time to go loud. Chief fights his way out of the structure, just like in the Silent Cartographer, and reaches the surface. Alright, so now he's alone on an island. The Covenant are dead, for now. Cortana has gone somewhere, and Chief has no means of transportation. Even if he did grab a Covenant Banshee or dropship, they would easily shoot him out of the sky. It's not until the Flood appear later and cause chaos that air travel becomes easier. Besides, where would he go? Chief has to do something possibly harder than anything he has done before. Wait. Chief waits. He checks out the structure more, collects some weapons, and waits some more. But nothing happens. Why aren't the Covenant coming back to the island? Well, without Captain Keyes or Sergeant Johnson or the rescue mission to the Truth and Reconciliation, command of the human forces is in tatters. The Covenant bulldoze right over the small groups on the ring. Without the human threat, the Covenant focused more on studying the ring and less on clearing out humans. This leads to a very dangerous discovery occurring sooner. The Covenant have found the Flood. Back on a remote island, Chief watches. He waits. He stays alert.
Greetings. I am the monitor of Installation 04. I am 343 Guilty Spark.
Guilty Spark shows up and teleports Chief away. In the normal timeline, Chief has at least seen the Flood. In this one, he's about to get a very shocking experience. He's going to the library. This is also a bit sooner since there are fewer reclaimers left. Guilty Spark has very few candidates to pick from. Although these enemies are new to him, they still die to bullets, especially buckshot. Chief makes it through the library like normal. Guilty Spark takes the index, and the two teleport to Halo's control room. They arrive, talk a bit more about the Flood, and insert the index. Just like in the normal timeline, it does something, but doesn't activate the ring's firing mechanism. Guess who it is?
I leave you for a few days and look what happens.
And if you thought she was mad at Chief in the original timeline, boy is she mad in this one.
You have no idea.
Yep, Cortana navigated herself through the ring's system into the control room. Initially, she just wanted to get away from Chief, but once she started learning about Halo, she focused more on getting to the center of information and control. She didn't trust Chief, and decided that staying in the system was safer than with him. Alright, where were we? Right, Cortana was ripping Chief a new one.
Do you have any idea what that bastard almost made you do?
Yes. Activate Halo's defenses and...
Sod off!
How could he not only kill the captain, but then go on this little quest to literally kill all human life, and other sentient life, in the galaxy? The discussion goes similarly to the original one, where Chief learns of the real power of the ring, and turns against Guilty Spark. Remember, killing Keyes was an accident, but Chief still had to live with the consequences. He's still on the side of humanity. The other humans just don't currently like him much right now. As the discussion turns hostile and Guilty Spark intends to kill Chief, Cortana has a difficult decision to make. She knows Chief will fight. She knows Guilty Spark will want the index from her, whatever it takes. Her best option, albeit not her favorite, is to go with Chief and destroy the ring. She tells Chief to put the chip in the terminal and take her.
Chief, get me out of this terminal!
Chief takes her, fights some sentinels, and then Cortana tells him they need to destroy Halo. They start with destroying a few phase pulse generators, like in the original timeline, but this time there's a lot more talking. Cortana is more open to trying to understand why Chief killed the captain. He says it was an accident, a sudden impulse he couldn't stop. Cortana still has her doubts, but she feels she can work with Chief to save humanity. One other difference in this mission would be the lack of humans. There would still be some human flood forms, but no Marines waiting for Chief, or a crashed Pelican with supplies. Things feel extra lonely for Chief. Finally, the last generator is destroyed. Now, about destroying Halo. Captain Keyes' body was left on the Pillar of Autumn when the crew were captured. Eventually, the Flood came along. As we know from
The Flood are gathering bodies here.
it seems simply being dead isn't enough to avoid infection. Having a nervous system is all that was really required. Captain Keyes, however, was shot in the head. His nervous system was pretty well scrambled, so the Flood couldn't infect his body. Besides that, the Covenant haven't taken as many losses in this conflict, so they were better equipped to fight the Flood. This means the Gravemind that was starting to form didn't start on the Truth and Reconciliation, rather it started on the Pillar of Autumn. That said, Cortana teleports Chief to the Pillar of Autumn, where they find said Gravemind. Chief grabs the captain's neural implants, they activate the ship's countdown, Spark interrupts it, Chief has an idea, and boom, Warthog run. Chief makes it to the Longsword and flies away as the ring is destroyed. So really, what was different? Well, first, Cortana knows what Chief did. She may have a hard time letting that one go. Perhaps it will resurface later when she starts going rampant, or perhaps she'll tell someone once she's back to Earth. Cortana and Chief's bond isn't nearly as strong as in the normal timeline. Second, absolutely no humans, except Chief, survived Halo. In the original lore, Johnson and a few other survivors met with Chief, stole a Covenant ship, visited Reach to get a human ship with slip space capability, and returned to Earth. The Reach visit was important to avoid bringing a Covenant ship to Earth. In this timeline, it's going to take Chief a bit longer to return. Third, Johnson didn't make it. He was part of the squad called in to take down Chief after Captain Keyes died. Sorry, Johnson. Nobody has good odds against the Spartan 2.
No! Man down!
The loss of Johnson would have significant impacts later in the story, especially the end of Halo 2. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed this what if, and if you did, you know what to do down below. Feel free to also give me suggestions on other what ifs. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Peace.